I'm 60 years old. I have schizoaffective disorder. My name is Sandra Ewan. Hello. So the inspiration for this film was the film Insanity, the Mental Health Crisis, released in 2022. And it features mental health issues across Canada and also specifically in Vancouver. And so last night I was at Redfish Healing Center, which is a rehabilitation center out at the Review Grounds in Coquitlam. And a group of us met there and watched the Insanity film. We had a panel discussion. I was thinking about this panel discussion with a friend, and we thought, maybe Sandra should make a film about a response to this whole issue. What is Sandra's response to this whole issue?
Pathways gave us information, showed us what we had to do, taught us about how the system doesn't connect and how you have to fight and you have to advocate and you have to really work on behalf of your loved one if you're going to get them anything. We know that the system really frowns upon and rejects often. If you go into a hospital and you get tested and when you're really disturbed, very psychotic, but if you test positive for any street drug, you're let go. You're discharged. They say, well, we can't treat this person because, they're an addict or they're an alcoholic. And so, again, their right to access treatment is always negated. So the system hasn't worked well. Redfish is the exception. The understanding of the acting is an exception.
So for those that don't know what Redfish Healing Center is, we are a provincial 9-month inpatient treatment program. I think what makes Redfish really unique, but also not that unique, is just simply the time and space that we've allowed for folks to heal in. So, in the time that I've worked here, we're doing some pretty amazing things, but I don't think we're doing anything super groundbreaking. We're still using evidence-based modalities and therapies. We obviously have a great team of professionals, but what's really different at Redfish is the 9-month program length and the fact that we have a physically therapeutic space to allow for that healing on these beautiful grounds as well. I don't think there's anything else in Canada, dare I say, worldwide, that has this length of inpatient treatment. On top of that, a lot of what the film spoke to really resonated with me, in that we're really motivated to really meet the person where they're at and see them as a human, as an individual. So along with the psychiatric care they're receiving, we have a full team of social workers, OTs, art therapists, music therapists, rec therapists, physio, dietitians, just this broad range of interdisciplinary staff members. And so I think with the 9-month length, yes, we're stabilizing the mental health. But then on top of that, what's I would say more important is refinding who you are. So we're refinding these hobbies and interests that folks may have lost because they've been so entrenched in their mental health or substance use. I think the last, and before I go on for too much longer, another thing that makes us really unique is that we are a concurrent disorders facility, meaning that we are addressing both the mental health and the substance use simultaneously.
One of the most significant recent innovations in the home mental health system has been the work of Dr. Daniel Vigo on behalf of the province. He has implemented early assessment of mental illness within our forensic system in the prison at the Surrey Pretrial Centre, so that someone who is brought in, who has a mental illness in psychosis, isn't locked up in a cell and in isolation until they get before a judge or a lawyer for whatever bad behavior that brought them there. They get assessed to see whether or not they have an illness that needs to be treated. That's a much more humane approach to our prisons, and the people who end up there because we've abandoned them on the streets or have not given them the treatment they needed.
Just to clarify, for those who don't know, ACT stands for Assertive Community Treatment, and the clients have dual diagnosis of mental illness and addiction. So for the clients, I'm there to support whatever that word spiritual means. And I know that's very broad and can mean a lot of things. But my training in the psychiatric hospital setting with clinical pastoral education is to meet folks where they are and to recognize that the spiritual path can be one of great healing for individuals, whether it's found in a religious tradition or otherwise. In the 1 year since I started working at ACT, there have been 21 deaths. And all of these deaths are preventable. In many ways, we are the system, and we have the power to change that system. Because the system as it is right now, despite so many wonderful efforts, as I see the faces of these individuals I've known right before me, in my mind's eye right now, the system failed each of them. And I feel their spirits calling out for us to change that system.
What we see down there, as I mentioned, our people are running. Our people are running from their traumas, running from their abuser. They don't have to see every day, so they run. And they come down here. Trying to be a dad myself, not with nobody teaching how to be a dad, and passing on those hurts that were passed on to me. And having my kids with anxiety because not knowing what kind of dad they were gonna have today. In the residential school, we're still impacted by that today.
Before and after the panel discussion, I interviewed a number of people from the community to hear what they had to say. One of the people I interviewed was Tanya, who was living in transitional housing. She was in recovery from alcoholism and had been sober for 3 years or more.
What has helped you recover, do you think, in your life? What has helped you get
My faith, and I don't mean religion. I believe in the universe. I believe in angels. I believe in guides. I believe that there are forces that we can't see that help us along our journey, and I'm very much immersed in that. I am a Reiki master. I do meditation all the time. I do tarot. So that helps me. It helps me to stay centered, stay grounded.
Tell me a little bit about, some of the barriers. So, what was the process to find housing? What is the process to find housing?
So I was very blessed. The Salvation Army has helped me immensely. When I first came out of treatment, I was in a place called Belkin House, which is downtown Vancouver. So they helped me to find this place, which is called Grace Mansion. It is also a subsidiary of Salvation Army. They've been wonderful. I really don't know where else I would have ended up without them. So I thank them every day. I express gratitude within myself every day. And now I'm looking for permanent housing now. So and they're helping me with that too. There are organizations that they lead me to. They give me leads. So it's wonderful. They're great, great people. I'm very blessed. And because I live on East Hastings Street, I can look out my window and down on the street and I see the struggles. I see the drug use. I see the mental deterioration of people. And I don't really see our government doing too much about any of this. Which is a real bone of contention. You see it in the summertime. I see them cleaning up in the summertime. And I actually saw them cleaning up 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 a.m. in the morning, when nobody's around, when all the tourists are not out touring. It just, where's the help for these people? They just clean up. They constantly clean up one side, the other side, in the core of downtown. they're not doing anything that I can see substantially to help these people. I don't even know how many people are on the street, but I know it's far too many. From what I understand, we have the worst poverty homeless rate in America, North America. I just thought, how did we get here? How do we get here? We got here because politicians ignore this place. They clean up and that's it, that's all. There has to be a different way of doing things. You can't just let this go on. There are so many people dying every single day, and the numbers are astronomical. And the province doesn't want that getting out. You know, we don't know for sure how many deaths because nobody's saying anything. It is the government's responsibility to look after the people in this province, and they're failing. It's plain and simple.
Carl?
I'm Carl McDonald, citizen, I guess you say, of the downtown east side of Vancouver. I've been here in the Forest Distance Co-op where we are now 23 years. It's supposed to be the law. You cannot do drugs. You cannot sell drugs, buy drugs, consume drugs anywhere around, whether it's children, around the library, around the community center. And right in front of the community center, Carnegie and Maiden Hastings there, they're just 24-hour drugs. Nobody's doing anything about it. The security there, it's the responsibility of people going in the door. They can't do anything. They're not the police. They can't do. They've been told. Don't get involved with anything that's going on out in the street. And the police don't even come around. There's supposed to be police patrols now. They don't even come around. It's just so disgusting. It's deterioration, just worse and worse.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any relief except like, oh, here's a Band-Aid for your wound. Where you're bleeding half to death, we give you a little Band-Aid. If somebody was to OD, you might see it quite a few times. You need an ambulance. You need paramedics. You need a person to bring the person back with whatever drugs they're using now. There's at least 5 or 6 personnel that are out looking after one person. And this is all over the city, not just down here.
What do you think the government could do better?
Well, you can get more money, but money isn't everything, of course. More detoxing, more places where people can get help. With the drugs that are out now, it's causing schizophrenia and all kinds of paranoia. We need more help down here. This is like Surrey and everywhere else. It's the same, with just the government's not doing anything about it. Riverview Mental Hospital, they closed that down. I think it was in the 70s. And they just brought people out from there down here, and it's got worse and worse day by day.
You know, the whole idea of the closure of Riverview in the late 90s, and then they wanted to deinstitutionalize and all that because they said institutions were not working very well. But then, they were never really replaced it with anything. And there was no rehabilitation out there for people. There are places, UBC, VGH, they have, long-term tertiary now, but it's where it's just so hard for people to go if they need some kind of help, ongoing 24 hours.
If there are tents and homeless, who want to live, or people who want to live, outside, why not give them a place to live? Why not build cabins or facilities, showers, washrooms and that, so they can live on the Riverview grounds? Why not develop that area so people can live there, away from the downtown east side, and just have people help support them there? It's not working.
Rory is a recovery navigator with The Junction, a Vancouver coastal health program for people in recovery from addictions, and has worked in the downtown east side. They are in recovery as well.
They continue to build up more housing around that, Main and Hastings area, where are those people going to go?
I don't think that they can really go anywhere because there is a critical mass of kind of people living in that area who are representative of that area that they won't be able to be unblocked. I think it's going to continue to be a source of social friction for a long time, but currently it's kind of going to continue to be this slow burn kind of feel.
It's location, right? So even if you were to okay, we're going to uproot these people and, move them to Riverview, have the community there, have village there, but it's location too, it's access, right? I had a personal experience. I called you when I needed help, and you connected me with a peer support worker within 20 minutes. And it was amazing to get someone I could talk to. And I find peers are so much more accessible for me than psychiatry and clinical counselors. I feel that peer support is just they get it. You just feel you connect a lot better. So it's really helpful that you came to my aid. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. So and you work with people in recovery. What, in your opinion, causes addiction? Why does it recur, and why do some fare better than others? Do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a question that so many people are asking nowadays, and I think society is definitely trying to deal with what has happened. If addiction has occurred, what do we do then? I think that's the big question society is focusing on, and sometimes it's really good to kind of bring it back and be like, well, how do we get there in the first place? Because,
is it a brain disease, like schizophrenia being a brain disease, or is mental illness caused by trauma or things that happen in your childhood? It's the same kind of thing, I think.
Exactly, and I think nowadays there are a lot more holistic models that kind of bring in an approach which definitely still reflects and understands some of that kind of more neuroscientific kind of brain chemistry stuff that is relevant. But I think that, and this is much more in alignment with a lot of non-Western thinking as well, and kind of expanded holistic definitions of wellness, where larger societal contexts and stress and especially early childhood experiences, like you just mentioned, adverse early childhood experiences are seen as some of the major contributors towards negative mental health experiences. In my personal experience, I have never met someone who says that they have addiction without having experienced some kind of major traumatic event in their life, whether it was something they had in childhood, whether it was a massive injury at some point, whether it was the death of a relative or a friend or someone close to them.
Yeah, a relationship or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it on a way that these different attitudes and those different theories have impacted society. The moral model obviously is caused incredible amounts of stigma. The brain disease model also causes stigma because it implies that someone has no agency or control over their life or their destiny. I think that's very highly dangerous. And it's been proved to, in a lot of studies, have contributed to stigma rather than reducing it, because it implies that people are not able to make their own decisions for themselves, and therefore maybe the state has to make decisions for them, which I think really helps contribute to a lot of the policy that we're seeing right now, where substance users and people with addiction don't have control over their own autonomy. And I would say lastly as well that colonization has played a massive role in what addiction looks like through dislocation and disconnection to culture.
Can you explain what that means?
100%. So dislocation essentially being separated from either the land or the culture or the people that you are connected to initially, or should be connected to in the context of your life. So if we think about the way that global capitalism has created this mass displacement where lots of people are being forced to migrate all the time, or the way that, for example, residential schools had this massive wave of dislocating Indigenous people here in Canada and across North America.
Can we deal with the trauma which may ignite them to go into drug use or become addicted? Can we deal with the grassroots of what's wrong in society so people don't have to move to do addictions? Can we put more detox centers in the system that people can go to for free so they can get help, move away from addiction, get housing, and acquire some sense of self again? People are primal, right? When you're in a primal state and you're in survival mode down there, or wherever you want to put it, in the downtown east side, and somebody lashes out at you or is disrespectful, wouldn't you be angry too? They talk about behavior modification. Oh, somebody's using to the point where behavior becomes harmful to others or whatever. To what extent is that? Who makes the rules? Can you fix the problem, which is society, which alienates people, which creates polarity between classes, between education, between geography, between races, between sexual orientation? You know, the idea that someone of color is treated differently, somebody who has homosexuality in their life is treated differently. Why? Why can't we all be equal? Why is there so much prejudice and stigma against all these different groups? Never mind the addicted, never mind the mentally ill. What about all these other people? I think that, if I may, that something has to change and has to come from people. We are all people on this earth, do not have humanity or respect for other people because they are human, because we are cognizant beings. Do not we deserve some respect and acknowledgement? I was on the bus. This man humbly asked for change. This woman wearing a mask, who was an elder, gave him some change. He said, "Thank you very much," and he paid for his fare on the bus. I stood there watching everybody. I reached into my pocket for 3 coins, 3 toonies. But did I have the gumption to go over and give it to him? No. I was, I can't be the one to give, I was stupid. I should just go over there and hand him the cash. Why? Because it's human, because it's right. Because people who come in humility and they have nothing, or they're in desperate need, or they're in temporary bad conditions, would you not someone to help you? If you were homeless or you were out of money, would you like not somebody to give you some cash so you could get a meal somewhere, a cup of coffee and a sandwich? Is it not, I'm in an apartment. I have my own refrigerator. Does this man have a refrigerator? Does this man have a home? Does this man have shoes? Does this man see into the next week? Is he going to live much longer? What is my reason for holding back? And that is my problem.
Bruce is a writer-poet.
Okay, let me know, where do you live here at this place? What's this place called?
This place is called Victory House. It's a group home. And it's got 47 people here. I've lived here for, 25 years.
What kind of things would help the people here have better lives? Or do you think they're pretty content?
Relatively speaking, they are. But I think, I believe, from my experience in group homes, that I think that everybody should have a better quality of life if they indulge in some sort of activity. And I would say that creative activity would be is a really good thing for people because it's therapeutic and keeps their mind busy, and there's pride and self-esteem in their work and what they do. There should be opportunities for work. I do believe that work is a human right, and that basically it can give a patient or a worker a feeling of pride, and it would also give them a feeling of belonging to the community.
A lot of people are writing their stories. A lot of people I know have written their stories. Erin Hawks, Susan Inman, who's a mother of someone who has mental illness. A lot of people in the community are starting to come forward with their stories in text form or poetry or whatever. And I think there are voices out there that you just have to connect with them. I think they're all willing to say, and they all have such unique stories. And there's one book up I was part of. It's called Off the Map. It's an anthology written by people with mental illness and also have some addictions. And it's so powerful because it gives these vignettes into people's lives.
Because I believe that mental illness comes when people are isolated and pushed outward to the fringes of society. And that's when you're vulnerable to all sorts of forces. It's true that people are generally afraid of insanity, or what they call insanity. They're afraid of it, and they tend to kind of ostracize, if that's the right word for it. And it's said that people with mental illness who are depending on the system, that this is the stigma, that people are depending on the system. And but despite that, I would say that oftentimes it's true that they are dependent on the system. I am basically dependent on the system in my life, and I have been that way for years.
But I think that's okay. I think some people just need a leg up. They need people have the necessity. They have right to live with housing and food, right?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I'm just saying that they should be given some sort of resources, that they should be involved in some sort of giving back to the community as the community gives back to them. It should be a give and take, and I think that a lot of the time people become dependent on the system because they're forced to do so.
So why do you think some people fare better than others? Like, does detox work?
Detox is a situation where it's a very highly medicalized environment. There's not a lot of wiggle room. It's all very clinical. So in that way, people who might need a more gentle kind of model or something that has a longer term sort of care, and where they wouldn't have to be off of the substance that they're trying to get off of so quickly, they could do it more gently. Sometimes it's people's only route to getting something like housing.
I also spoke to somebody else and they said for a mentally ill person to get housing, they almost need to be like homeless for them to get on the top of the list.
One last thing about the point of danger with detox is that if someone loses their tolerance to a substance, then they are far more likely to overdose on it if they were to go back to using that again.
So so I heard that government has these new rules. So they allow open use of street drugs and the right to carry small amounts, but the police will still pick up drug users and put them in jail, hospital, or detox.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a conflict?
Absolutely. Any policy where the police are involved, they get to interpret it. They are responsible for far too many things, like mental health checkups. Should not be operated by police.
Yes,
that should be operated by some kind of like mental health service that is like crisis intervention based and like trauma informed care.
Yeah, I think also in the mental health system, like they put you in like PAU or whatever, and you put in isolation for a number of days, and then you're put into a ward, and it's punitive in a way. People are being punished for being trying to survive in society. What do you think would help with the fentanyl crisis?
Just in terms of where it's coming from, fentanyl, because it's a synthetic opioid, can be created almost anywhere. And they're discovering different ways of making it all the time. We call those analogs. There really is no feasible way through elevating the drug war that the government or the police could ever stop the flow of fentanyl. And it can be made here in Canada.
Like crystal meth, right?
Totally,
Yeah.
It's exactly like that. The thing that people should be doing a lot more often is testing their drugs. But if you're addicted and you need your fix, then you're not going to test your shit because you need that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the whole concept of safe supply is that the street supply is so toxic and it is so irredeemable because it is killing so many people that we need to have a supply of drugs that is consistent and reliable.
Yeah.
And the Drug User Liberation Front did their pilot project. They did a study on the reactions of people versus street supply, and everybody who used that supply that they got had significantly reduced overdoses, significantly reduced times of going to hospital, significantly reduced negative mental health experiences like breakdowns and things like that in reaction to using those drugs as well. We know in the community that works.
Yeah.
Right. That having a safe supply of drugs will save lives.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, I know one fellow went through loss of a partner and became very, very depressed and turned to cocaine in this, but used it for a short time. Had a supply that was safe, and now does not use, and he seems to be fine. You know what I mean? Like he seems to, he's gone through it. It helped him through that time. He says. He admits that it helped him through that difficult time, and that was the purpose of it.
Relapse is actually a part of recovery, which is something that we're trying to kind of bring to the fore and being like, no, like people are going to have mistakes, people are going to relapse, and they shouldn't get punished for doing that because it's not about the strength of character or someone or their strength of will. It's literally a part of what that prognosis looks like.
It's like mental illness in a way, because for me, having schizophrenia is more, they describe as a brain disease. They say they don't blame me, but then if I go off my medication, or don't take care of myself, or not do my self-care, and I get ill, or not sleeping enough, don't do all these things, then I get sick.
So I was editing the film, and I kind of got stonewalled. I didn't know where to go. I didn't really have a solution. It seems like there's only so much you can do. This problem's been going on for a long time. We could go back and say Riverview was a mistake when they closed it and didn't have rehab facilities available after they left. On the outside, you could say that, but now the problem's there. What are we going to do? So, I think they're going to live in that community, right? People live in the community they know. And I know it's expensive and everybody's concerned about money, but human life is more important. In regards to prostitution is one of the oldest professions, right? And to have that legalized and to be regulated is a step. Because these things happen, and you cannot just ignore things that are happening in the world. You have to accept them and work with them. To protect lives is more important. So if the downtown East Side citizens, would like to stay in that community, why not build a village for them there? You built Oak Ridge for the community. Why not build a village for people in the downtown East Side that they feel comfortable in, that they can live in, with housing, with facilities, with sanitation, with washrooms, with things that they can access easily so that they can live in the community they are part of. To push them out or ignore the problem is wrong. They will not go away. These problems will not go away. Medication's there forever, right? And so are street drugs, or whatever you want to call them. Okay? Society created the problem, right? So what is the solution? Oh, it's too expensive, Sandra. We can't do that. We can't give them that market housing area. Why don't you take all that market housing you plan for the downtown East Side and provide it to the citizens that live there? In fact, why don't you change the whole housing situation across Vancouver, where people are, can't afford homes, and there's a lot of empty condos. There's a lot of overbuilding, right? So why don't we just fix that and provide that housing for people who really need it? The citizens who have been here, people that live here. Thank you. In regards to discrimination and stigma about the mentally ill and those who are addicted, if people are addicted because of trauma, because of real problems they experience in their lives, are they still not valuable as citizens just because they've suffered and gone down a path? Is it all right to help them? To build rehab facilities in that area that they can access. Right there. Detox or whatever they need to keep them well, to help them. And regards to the Indigenous community, we really need to help them too. And I hope I haven't ignored that part of it. I'm not Indigenous. I may not have the same experience they have, but I think they also have a say in this as well. I would asked for a round table, not one with a head on it, but a round table discussion between different parties of the Indigenous community and the downtown east side, people that live there, people that want a voice, that they can step forward and say, hey, this isn't working, can you help us? Because that's what they're asking for. They're asking for help.
For us to uplift more Indigenous and marginalized voices is for people in positions of power to actively divest some of their resources and some of their power to, or all of it, ideally, to create more room and more space and uplift Indigenous voices and uplift these marginalized voices.
More of a round table rather than one up at the top. Yeah.
I remember on the island when I was in Nanaimo years ago that we would go to a place called Providence Farm, and that's where they grew fruit trees, apple trees, and they had crops and stuff. And people from the group home that I was living in would go there every day and work there. And I think that kind of thing is a very interesting experiment that I think has potential, you know. That kind of thing, it doesn't mean that there's a ranch or a farm like available in every place, but to me that's the ideal way of treatment, is to, first of all, of course, there's a medication, and whether you believe in the medication or not, that's part of the treatment. And but the other part of the treatment is to involve people in activity, and ideally it should be creative, you know.
And most importantly, I try to advocate for more appropriate spending on mental illness, and I think the film talked about moving from 7% to 10%, and that's an additional 3% would make a big difference. Do speak up on behalf of the people, and you know, don't cut the families out if you're working in the field.
The best treatment is how we treat people. It would be to continue to dream big, to continue to envision what it would be like to replace the system that we have now with something better. As I was driving up today in traffic, right, coming down the street here, I saw, you know, this campus of Riverview, right, and all these buildings that are now empty. What if all the clients that we saw who were suffering were housed there?
We help our people or whoever wants help to get detoxed treatment, recovery, or home, if that's the desire. And so, and I ran the cards, so I said, I'll be right back, I'm just around the corner. So, and I was walking out, the young lady from my group came running after me, and she goes, I'm ready, I need that.
Thousands of success stories here, and it's a lot of the times from people who have really hit rock bottom, but to see them finish treatment 9 months, move on to greater, better things in life, it's really wonderful to hear and see. And it takes time, it doesn't happen overnight, but that's, I think, what drives me to continue doing this work, is that I know there is a difference and that people really can come out of the better end of this. So yeah.